As a Scrum Master, how can you effectively support your Agile Release Train? This is a very important question and a tricky one for that matter, because you need to understand exactly what an Agile Release Train is, which is the first thing I'm going to explain in this video. And then I'm going to explain the role of the Agile Release Train engineer and the role of a Scrum Master in the Agile Release Train, and how you as a Scrum Master can effectively be of contribution to the Agile Release Train itself and to the Release Train engineer. So we are going to dissect this question fully. So make sure you stay into the end of this video, because I'm going to take every part of the question and I'm going to break it down for you. So if you're going for any interview that is a safe environment, you're not panicking that you might be asked a question which you will not understand. Hello, welcome to the Safe Chat Room with Dr. Francis Mbunya. And if you're new here, hit the subscribe button. For a returning subscriber, thank you for staying tuned. This week, we're going to be putting 3 videos: Monday, Wednesdays, Friday. So we have a cadence now. So you check any of these days, you're going to have a video. And also make sure that if you want to request me to do a video, put it on the chat box so that I can pick up that video. For those who want to be coached by me and my team, reach out to me using the number on the screen, and we will tell you if we have space available for you or not. And for those who want to be Safe Scrum Master certified, our next training is coming on the 3rd of October. You can sign in early on time. It's probable that you might have an early bird discount. All right, without wasting much time, let's get into our question for the day. The question is, how will you support your Agile Release Train as a Scrum Master? Now, the first part of this question is for you to understand what an Agile Release Train is. An Agile Release Train is a team of 12. It's a team of 5 to 12. Okay, wait a minute. An Agile Release Train contain about 50 to 125 members. So it's a team of 5 to 12, right? So it's a team of 5 to 12 teams. And Agile Release Train is a team of teams. Sometimes the stuff can be a bit confusing. An Agile Release Train is a team of 5 to 12 teams. Or an Agile Release Train is a train of 5 to 12 teams. Why do we call it Agile Release Train? Just picture when we talk about a train, right? If you have been in a train before, you realize that a train has different wagons. And each of these wagons can be separated, right? When the train gets to its destination, if they're going to 2 destinations, the train can split, and some of the wagon can go in one direction, another wagon can go in another direction. It's called an Agile Release Train because we only meet to plan during PI planning. After that, all the other teams are released to go back and practice Scrum. So the first way you as a Scrum Master support your Agile Release Train is to collaborate with your Release Train engineer. Now, the Release Train engineer is like a chief Scrum Master, and the Release Train engineer facilitates the events in the Agile Release Train. So you want to start this question by talking about how you prepare for a PI planning, because that is the core of an Agile Release Train. That's what brings it together. The PI planning, where they plan the work that they are going to do within the PI cadence. And we'll talk about PI cadence, which is the PI cycle. It can either be 4 iteration, 5 iteration, or 6 iteration, which means between 8 to 12 weeks, right? Now, prior to every iteration, there is what we call the IP iteration, innovation planning iteration. Now, for you to even understand innovation planning iteration, it's good to understand what we call the program increment planning, which is the PI planning. So the first thing, you support the PI planning. How do you support the PI planning? The PI planning is a 2-day event where all the teams within the Agile Release Train come together to plan the work that they're going to complete within that Agile, PI cycle. So in the PI increment, in the PI planning, what happened is that we are working on the top 10 features. Now, sometimes when we talk about the top 10 features, in the Agile Release Train, which is managed by the program management or by the product management. Now, sometimes we think like, oh, it must be 10 features. No, the reason we always talk about the top 10 features in PI Planner is because the program backlog is expected at any point T to have at least 10 validated features that are ready to be developed. But depending on the capacity of the Agile Release Train, we can have more than 10 features, we can have less than 10 features. But then every stuff that we do in Agile, it's a compass, it's a guideline. For instance, we say an Agile Release Train is a team of 5 to 12 members, which is recommended by SAFe. But I've seen Agile Release Train that goes up to 17 teams. All right, so and then even the PI circle, we always say, okay, it should be between 8 weeks and 12 weeks. I've seen a train that is 14 weeks. So different enterprise re-customize it to fit their need. But then, what's your role as a Scrum Master? Your role as a Scrum Master, number one, is that you're supporting the release train engineer. The first thing you can support the release train engineer in setting up the environment for the PI. If you're doing it virtually, you might coordinate and reach out to the release train environment, release train engineer to ask if you can support creating out the breakout room, if you can support admitting people into the room, or if you can support maybe just preparing the conference page or whatever page where all the teams are going to share their breakout rooms in there. So you can reach out to the release train engineer to ask if you can support. All right. Now, the second contribution to the Agile Release Train is that you need to prepare your team for the program planning increment. Assuming that your team is not familiar with the program increment, what you need to do is to explain to them what is going to take place during that PI planning and what they are expected to do. Now, what is taking place during the PI planning? In practice, we say that's a 2 days event. But since we're running virtually and most often with co-located teams, you might have teams that are connecting from Europe, from India, different part of the world. We can run it within 2 days, right? Because, for instance, I live in Dallas, Texas. By 2 p.m. Dallas, Texas is somewhere about 12:30 midnight or 1 p.m., 1 a.m. in India. So I can run a PI planning from 8 a.m. to about 5 p.m. because I'm considering all my team members that are located in other places. So for that reason, we often spread it out within 3 days, right? The first days is more of executive briefing, product vision, and then the architectural runway. From the second day, we start the breakout room one, finish our draft planning in the second day, and the third day, we receive the feedback from management, we finish our PI plan, and then we detach as a train, go back and implement Scrum. So during the PI planning, what you're doing, prior to the PI planning, what you're doing, you're reaching out to the release training engineer, trying to say, okay, if your team has been assigned some features, it's always good to have a look at those features prior to the event so that you can already start planning and putting a couple of stuff together for your team so that your team doesn't see what they're working on only during the PI planning. So it helps the mind to prepare. That's one of the main reasons for the IP iteration. All right. Now, the next thing you also do is that during the PI itself, the first thing you attend the first Scrum of Scrum. The first Scrum of Scrum is just a check with the release train engineer to see if you have all your team available, all resources available, to see if you have submitted your capacity sheet that kind of say what you're available and the availability of your team members, and to see if you know where your breakout room is, and to see if you've been assigned your futures. So we do that first check in the Scrum of Scrum prior to the start of every PI. Now, in the middle of the PI, when you start getting to breakout room and start planning, you go for the second Scrum of Scrum, where the release training engineer is checking if your team has started planning, if you're already kind of ready to start, you're working on your draft plan already, and if you're already assigning some certain risks already, and if you're already identifying dependency, just to make sure that by the first of the end, by the first of day one, you should at least have a draft plan. So the main focus is on the first two iterations to plan it out a bit in detail. The rest of the iteration just to kind of figure out how the features are going to spread across that. So, and also identifying dependency. This is very important because at the end of day one, when you roll back the draft plan to management, they kind of see how dependencies are roll out will be played out between the teams, because if there's so many dependency, it might be a risk that can hinder the completion of the workload during that PI. So they check those dependency. They also check availability of resources. They check on how if some teams are having more work than the other, they can kind of redistribute. And then on day two, what you're doing on day two, after you receive feedback from management, you are also helping your team to be able to incorporate this feedback. Now, your role is not technical, your role is facilitating. So you are facilitating, making sure that planning, just like what you would do in sprint planning or iteration planning, when there's a dependency, they say, oh, we have a dependency with this team. You take note on what dependency they are, and then you locate the other team breakout room, you go in there, try to have a conversation, know exactly when they are going to be completing this dependency, and then bring the feedback to your team and see if the other team is willing to commit or not. Look at the time frame that your team will be completing your own part of the work and the other team, and see if that's going to be a good fit. If not, you might have to kind of go to the release train engineer and negotiate for an exchange, or try to find a win-win for the collaboration, right? Now, also remember that the Scrum of Scrum also goes on when the PI cycle is going on, so that we can meet and look at how collaboration is going in terms of dependency and how we're moving towards the PI objective. Okay, so kind of a summary. What am I saying? The first thing is that you collaborate with the release train engineer to make sure that your team is ready for the PI. During the PI, first thing, you're attending the Scrum of Scrum. Second thing, you're facilitating your team. You're facilitating to make sure your team is all breaking down features into their team backlog. The next thing, you're also making sure that you're helping the team facilitate dependency with other teams. One of the things you also do is to manage the program bot, which means that you want to make sure that the features that your team has broken down, all of them are in the program bot. Now, what you want to also do in day two, apart from attending the Scrum of Scrum, helping your team break down the features into stories and put them in your team backlog, you're also making sure that all risks are identified. You're making sure that the risks are also roamed. I'm going to talk about risk roaming in another video. And then you're also making sure that we're doing a vote of confidence to make sure everyone is okay with the plan, and you're helping also in the what the last thing in also doing a retrospective for the event. So that is how you can support your Agile Release Train. So the question, how do you support your Agile Release Train, simply means that what is your role as a Scrum Master in PI planning? All right, I hope we did some justice in answering that question. If you have a follow-up question, drop it down here. I'm definitely gonna answer it in a follow-up video. All right, on Wednesday, I'm gonna be releasing a video on what you do as a Scrum Master from day one to the last day of your sprint. I'll see you in the next video on Wednesday. Do not forget to like, do not forget to subscribe. I'll see you then.